The fly loves a spider. Metamorphosis. By me, Wren. The yellow golden orb weaver found the fly before he found them. At 18, he craved love, a soft love. Back then, he had answered to a different name, wore lipstick, tight dresses, performed femininity so intensely it almost became theatrical. Like if he perfected it enough, nobody would notice how badly it fit him. Wanting to be a man felt so ugly back then. Selfish. Oh, so very selfish. He would claw out of a grave people already learned to mourn. My daughter died, his dad told him. His daughter did die. That person no longer exists. Flies survive by making themselves small enough not to swat. He got lost trying to find them at the state fair. Everything was bright and fast and intoxicating. Bright lights illuminated and streaked across his vision. Loud music blared while crowds talked and walked around aimlessly in the lit up night sky. Moth people hung around chain smoking. Couples kissed, drunk people fell while their friend helped them up. The baby cries, something breaks. The smell of fried food and sugar filled the air. He waited by the carousel where the two had agreed. Then he heard their voice. Hey, Bugaboo. Soft, warm, weaving through the crowd towards him with golden limbs. Their abdomen was round and patterned in pale yellow stripes like flower petals. They had perfect golden brown eyes. Fine golden hairs covered her arms, pretty in the way orb weavers often are. Oh, they looked beautiful and strong. You look lost, they teased. I was. We still are. At the time, he thought it sounded romantic and just melted every time they smiled. Years later, sitting alone in a tiny apartment on an air mattress with testosterone vials, Smirnoff cans, and Monster Energy drinks littering the floor, he realizes they were right in a way, just not how they had meant it. He was lost, hadn't yet become a person, didn't know what good music was or what beer tasted like. He closes his eyes. He is at the state fair again. They smiled at him, and his entire body buzzed. The fly and the orb weaver rode the carousel together. He tried not to stare at them for too long, but felt entranced the more they spoke, felt this warm pit in his stomach every time they smiled or laughed. It all felt natural. When they touched his arm, he thought he might die from it. At 18, being wanted felt indistinguishable from being loved. Sometimes at 23, it still feels that way. He's still not the age they were when they first met. Later, they rode the Ferris wheel. By some chance of fate, they were the ones at the top. To him, it was kismet. Like the universe was briefly turning its face towards him. Everything looked so beautiful, it felt like his heart stopped for a moment. They looked breathtaking under that light. One of the most beautiful people he had ever seen. Fireworks boomed across the sky. It feels fake up here, the fly whispered. Yeah, it's like a movie. They leaned in close. The fly stared too long, expecting them to look away first. They didn't look away. Maybe it is. And then they kissed him. So sweetly, caressing his face in a mockery of a lover's gesture, like he was worth being gentle to. Years later, he would still lay awake at night and remember the feeling of their pedipalps brushing against his wrist as they kissed. He would think of their soft, sleepy voice late at night, the way they looked at him. They looked like they were looking at something beautiful, something that mattered and had a purpose. The way they looked at him, the way he mattered. At 18, he would have followed anyone who made him feel beautiful. They spent the entire night that first date tangled up in each other's arms. He remembered feeling wanted in a way that made his chest ache. Not feminine, not masculine either, just wanted. In the morning, he kissed him softly before they left for work. It would have been an entire year before he saw them in person again. It would take him years to understand how deeply that kindness had carved into him. You carry your first real tenderness forever, even after it begins to rot inside of you. At 18, he thought love was something you earned through endurance. If he stayed patient enough, maybe eventually somebody would choose him completely. If he was good enough, pretty enough, if he did enough. The orb weaver knew he had a girlfriend when he moved back into town. They had invited him over, laid their head in his lap one evening after a year of nothing but politeness and a strange lingering tension. The fly absent-mindedly pet their hair while they scrolled through Tumblr on his phone. The orb weaver would whisper off of the dirty post in his ear every time he scrolled past one. He pretended to ignore it, but his face felt hot. Oh my god, listen to this one. No! Yes. Mm. The orb weaver laughed softly while reading it anyway, and the fly thought they sounded beautiful when they laughed. They were so beautiful it hurt. Everything about them was beautiful. The orb weaver shifted closer against him. Then they kissed him. Slow, soft, like the first time. Care and tender, caressing his hands in their own. So sweet. The way they looked at him felt like he mattered, like there was something worth loving inside him after all. They cried together after and talked about their problems, their failed relationships, and all of the ugly things buried beneath their exoskeletons and hidden in the closet. The fly admitted his girlfriend had been cheating. They were quiet for a moment after. Oh, Buckaboo, they whispered softly. Just that. Oh, Buckaboo. And then they had sex. The best sex he had or ever will have in his entire life. A feeling he will chase to replicate for years. Not because it was perfect or soft or slow or romantic or rough, because for a few hours he wasn't invisible anymore. When their hands were on them and they looked at him softly and wanted him, it felt less like attraction and more like absolution. God. Their love felt like forgiveness, like being chosen by the future itself. A future where he could be someone real. When he was having sex and it was just the two of them, for a small moment in the space they shared in that time, all the people he was being cheated on with didn't exist. In that tiny little stretch of time, it was only them. Only them. For an entire year, they shared that strange space together. 5 hour long sex, vampire shows, and Owl House until sunrise. Talking about books and art and their friends and the orb weaver's job and thinking, and the fly thinking, they're so fucking cool for ordering a beer at 10 a.m., tasting cigarettes on their lips, sharing food in bed, absent-mindedly kissing each other in between conversations. The fly humiliatingly, the fly fell humiliatingly in love with them with every inch of their being. Of course he did. He wouldn't call it love now that he's 23. Maybe infatuation. At 18, he still mistook intimacy for permanence. Eventually, he'd ask them out properly. They were in bed, cuddling after having sex. The orb weaver softly sighed. not in a cruel way, almost guilty. I like how things are, they told him carefully. The fly smiled like that answer didn't hollow him out completely. Orb weavers build beautiful things meant to keep prey suspended. The fly moved away not too long after, and when he came back, he already had another partner, a wolf spider. She was older too, because of course she was. At 18, older queer people felt mythological to him, especially older trans people. They carried themselves with the kind of confidence and grief and survival he could not stop orbiting around like a desperate little moth. Seeing someone endure everything that transition demanded of them and still choosing to be themselves felt holy to him. He admired them in ways he did not yet have the language for. The orb weaver suffered for it, he could see that much. The long pauses before they answered certain questions, the way strangers stared too long. Society is especially cruel to our trans sisters. The fly learned that young. The exhaustion tucked beneath even their softest smiles, but they were themselves. God, they got to be themselves, really actually themselves. They were happy. The fly moved away not too long after. When he came back, he already had another partner. Fucking man slut. A wolf spider, too. She was older because, of course, she was. The wolf spider worked nights as a security guard at a rich person apartment. She had dark, thick, wavy hair and these beautiful brown, half-lidded eyes. Long legs that long legs that moved with restless energy even when she was sitting still. Wolf spiders never build webs. They chase things down themselves. The fly admired her immediately. She had transitioned too. He never told her how badly he envied that. Sometimes after seeing her, he would stand shirtless in front of the bathroom mirror, pressing his hands against his chest, imagining absence. The wolf spider rarely spoke much. The fly would instinctively fill the silence, nervous wings buzzing constantly while he talked. He would desperately try to make himself lovable to keep her around. Lovable enough. I can't speak, goodness. One of their many nights together, he brought her Wendy's for the night shift. They sat in the front seat of her car watching Naruto on her phone while rain hit the window softly. She would drive. She would always drive fast and recklessly. He liked it a lot. He thought it was so cool she was old enough to drink and smoke cigarettes. Come sit back here, she murmured. I'm comfy. I'll get blankets. She climbed out of the car and returned a moment later carrying blankets from the trunk. And then her lips were on his. Starving, hungry. Wolf spiders do not wait for prey to wander willingly into silk. They pursue. The fly remembered his heart pounding so hard he could swear she could feel it through his ribs. Then she pulls back. They're both panting. He wasn't sure if he wanted to, but he didn't want her to go. Come with me. She grabbed him by the hand and led him to the empty commons room. It was nice. It had couches and a little reading area. She fucked him on that couch. He thought if someone touched him long enough, eventually they would know him. They never really knew each other. Not really. Still, he adored her. He had sit naked in her lap. She said, I want to make it official. Can you be my girl? God, he was over the moon. He wished she would call him her man. The first apartment the fly ever had, the wolf spider visited him that first night. No couch, No table, no decorations. There was a mattress on the floor, a laptop, and a takeout container shoved into the corner. Love, Death, and Robots played quietly from the laptop as he tried not to stare at her and pretended his heart wasn't racing, feeling her hand on the small of his back. He couldn't stop staring. She looked angelic, older, beautiful, confident, survived. At 18, he thought older trans people were holy. Proof people like him could survive long enough to become themselves. Then her hands were on him again, all over, hungry, starving. Wolf spiders pursue what they want directly. The fly mistook that hunger for devotion constantly. Afterward, she left sometime near sunrise. The fly laid awake on his mattress, staring at the ceiling, feeling strangely empty despite how wonderful the moment was, despite how much he still wanted her. The sinking feeling. Mm. That sinking feeling would become more and more familiar as the years started to pass. He kept talking to her on and off again after moving away once again. Sometimes months would pass between conversations. Sometimes they would talk every night for weeks. He cheated on many partners with her. One Christmas, he flew back out to Albuquerque to go see his mom and sister. He told the wolf spider beforehand they weren't going to be having sex. He remembers trying very hard to mean it, and the wolf spider had offered to let him stay with her anyways. He should have known better. The first night she convinced him to sleep in her bed. She said he didn't want him to be uncomfortable on the couch. Then her hands were on him, then her mouth. The fly knew she wouldn't want him anymore if he said no, so they had sex. Again, and again, and again. Christmas morning, his mother begged him to invite the wolf spider over for dinner. She sounds important to you, she said gently. The fly knew she would never come. Still, his mother cooked extra food anyway. His mom had even left a secret note for her, a sweet note for the wolf spider. The fly stared at the note the entire drive back to her house. The wolf spider barely looked up when he handed her the food and the note his mom left for her. You can eat it or throw it away, she shrugged. Then she rolled over in bed and she reached for him again. The fly stared at the untouched food container sitting on the counter the rest of the night and slept on the couch. He threw it out in the morning. Something inside him went quiet after that. He slept with her again before leaving town. Being wanted felt close enough to love the fly could pretend not to notice the difference. Eventually, one night, many years later, he came out to her, told her he was trans too. She read it, and there was no response for 40 minutes. Then she blocked him. One of the last things she ever told him was that she damaged her voice trying to kill herself drinking bleach, and now she works as a DJ. The fly still thinks about that sometimes. Survival, dragging yourself bleeding into a future you never dreamed you could reach. The first apartment the fly ever had, the wolf spider was there. He only had his mattress on the floor, but she stayed anyways. There were two final times the fly saw the wolf spider. By then, he already had a new girlfriend. Many years later, he had crossed paths with a parasitoid wasp. The wolf spider's birthday was a week before his. The fly brought her a monster energy drink. The original because she didn't like things that were too sweet and enjoyed the aftertaste. When he got there, he saw her with the girl, prettier and confident in a way he had never been. The wolf spider barely looked at them before turning back and laughing at whatever they had said. I completely butchered that sentence, by the way. That's not what I wrote. I just said a bunch of bullshit. Let me reread that last part. I'm so sorry. I'm like knee deep into this recording too, and it'll be a pain in the ass to edit. Okay, let's start again. My bad. When he got there, he saw her with the girl, prettier and confident in a way he had never been. The wolf spider barely looked at him before turning back at the other woman and laughing at whatever she had just said. The fly just stood there awkwardly, holding the can a moment too long. They looked so happy together. She had talked more to that random girl in one conversation than she would talk to the fly in an entire week. He never saw the wolf spider look at him like that. Not once. Not even while she was inside him. The realization had hollowed him out quietly. The wolf spider took the drink with a distracted thank you before disappearing back inside. The fly drove home afterward, chain smoking cigarettes. He promised his girlfriend he would quit with the windows rolled down despite the cold. The fly was with the parasitoid wasp then, anyways. They stayed together for 3 years. The wasp would disappear for days on end on these coke benders and show up at his door in the middle of the night. Bug. Ugh. She'd mumble dramatically, collapsing face first onto his mattress. Make me a quesadilla, Bug. God, his favorite sentence of hers. Your wish is my law, he would tell her. Loved her in the pathetic, wholehearted way lonely people love things that hurt them. The parasitoid wasp had glossy black wings that reflected oil slick colors beneath those harsh, unpleasant apartment lights. She spoke passionately about art and books and films like every conversation was life or death. The fly thought she was one of the most fascinating people he had ever met. Every joke she made rewired something inside him. The books he reads, his art, his writing, his jokes, some of his clothes, even some of his coping mechanisms years later. Years later, he carries a piece of her with him, a piece of everyone he has ever loved, but mainly her. Parasitoid wasps survive by leaving pieces of themselves inside other living things. Not enough to kill immediately, just enough to alter behavior, enough to linger. The fly carried all of them inside him still. At first, the wasp felt like his salvation, not because she was stable. God, no, not even a little. The fly had never associated love with stability. Wouldn't it be nice? But she understood him in a way he felt like nobody else had before, saw him in a way that no one else saw him. The horrifying part is maybe she really did love him once. Her love felt like forgiveness, like being chosen by the future itself, a future where he could finally become real. When he was having sex, for a moment he actually mattered, and it was just the two of them. And all of the people he was being cheated on and with did not exist in that moment. And that tiny stretch of time, it was only them. Only them. The fly thought he had finally found his soulmate, which made what came later on so much worse. The wasp handed him a copy of Nabokov one morning with highlighted passages bleeding neon pink across pages. You'll like this one, she told him. I want you to highlight all of your favorite parts so I can see it too. Every time the fly gets someone he likes a book now, he brings highlighters so he can see their favorite parts. Does loving someone mean they begin arranging the architecture of your mind permanently? Years later, he still reads her favorite authors, still quotes movies she loved, still hears her voice whenever he opens certain books. Some parasites alter behavior long after leaving the body. The fly starts as prey, but afterwards he becomes capable of hurting people the same ways he was hurt. At 23, he realized he was like all of these other people. He'd accidentally start withholding affection, kissing strangers the way they kissed him, lying, cheating, drinking, smoking, all of the same things they did. Through the years, the fly started to think if he said yes enough, maybe he could get someone to stay. If not, he could just cheat on people and hurt others. Yes to sex. Yes to driving across town at 4 in the morning. Yes to emotional caretaking. Yes to swallowing jealousy. Yes to becoming whatever somebody needed that night. To be loved was to be useful, to erase oneself. No one had ever taught the fly otherwise. The many spiders throughout his life, hunger, and the parasitoid's vitality, the cruelty, the damage, their survival instincts, their tenderness, their hatred, their passion, it brought about his metamorphosis. He became a product of everyone who had ever touched him. The parasitoid wasp loved American Psycho, not Patrick Bateman himself, the emptiness, the artificiality. There is an idea of Patrick Bateman, she quoted once while chain smoking out on the apartment window. The fly stood behind her, cooking shitty instant ramen at 3 in the morning, wearing her t-shirt while she came down from another coke binge. But there is no real me, she said. The first time he ever admitted out loud that he might be a man, they were laying in bed together at 6 in the morning while snow collected softly outside the apartment window. The fly was crying so hard he could barely breathe. There's something wrong with me. Something deeply, horribly, and intrinsically wrong with me. He was shaking. The wasp looked half asleep. I can't keep living like this, I think. His voice broke. I want to be a boy. The wasp was quiet for a moment. Then she reached over and brushed hair out of his face gently. You already are one bug. The fly started sobbing harder after that. Not because it fixed anything, because somebody saw him. The wasp became a safe space for all of the ugly, terrifying feelings he had spent years trying to bury alive. She taught him how to do his injections, put band-aids on it after shot day, explained surgeries, talked about how to survive dysphoria. The fly never thought he could or would be allowed to, or that he would ever get to be him. The wasp made it feel possible, like he could maybe survive himself too. That was the cruelest thing she ever did to him. She made him want a future. The fly mistook this for love immediately. Maybe it was love. It was definitely destruction with everything else involved. The fly really didn't know the difference. Still doesn't know. Visibility was addictive. Being seen. Sex would consume evenings and nights, and the two would disappear into each other while obscure movies would play forgotten in the background. Slowly, the parasitoid wasp began falling in love with somebody else. The fly watched it happen, watched her become softer with another girl. He wasn't a girl. She was patient with her, that other girl. Kinder, more thoughtful. He watched her do everything he had quietly begged for, everything he had ever dreamed of doing with the wasp she did with the other girl. Everything. Art museums, libraries, coffee shops, ice cream dates, thrift stores, reading together quietly in sunlight. The fly wanted domesticity so badly that it ached. He didn't want marriage or white picket fences, just softness, just to sit quietly beside somebody and know they would still choose him tomorrow. He wanted to sit in the wasp lap while sunlight poured through their shared apartment window, warming the two in gold. Wanted to glance over every few minutes and watch her reactions while she read. Wanted to cook with her. Wanted to read with her. Wanted to love her. Wanted all of it so badly he could taste it. Wanted to taste her. Sometimes he would ask, "Do you want to go to the museum with me?" "I'm tired." "You want to go thrifting?" "Not really." "You want to just read together or something?" "I don't know, Bug. Maybe later." The fly tried to not let it hurt him. He failed constantly. One night he finally asked, "Why do you do all of that stuff with her but not me?" The parasitoid barely looks up from her phone, texting someone else. Well, she wanted to. The shrug. That tiny, stupid sentence split something open inside of the fly permanently. But still, he stayed. Of course, he stayed. At 23, he understands this differently. Back then, he believed love was something earned through usefulness. If he was patient enough, soft enough, understanding enough, useful enough, accommodating enough, sexy enough, maybe eventually somebody would choose him completely. So he cooked for her, held her while she crashed from coke. Bug. She'd mumble, looking like she just came back from the dead. "Can you play with my hair?" And God, he would have done anything she asked. Rubbed her back while she cried, supported her through her worst moments and mania, quit smoking because she asked him to, even while she kept drinking and using herself and doing coke, even reeking of cigarettes here and there when he couldn't smoke. The fly would have carved pieces off his own body and handed them to her if she asked sweetly enough. He would have felt honored to have the opportunity to. If he let her touch him whenever she wanted, maybe eventually he would stop feeling replaceable. But people do not simply stay because you let them consume you. That isn't love, that's hunger. Eventually they moved in together. That's when the screaming started. The wasp would scream, and then he would scream back louder. Then she would too, and he'd yell louder too. Both of them unstable, both terrified of abandonment. By the time they were done screaming, it would be 5 in the morning. The fly would sit alone in his car, smoking cigarettes behind her back while crying so hard his throat hurt, already hoarse from screaming. And then he'd go back up and he'd apologize to her. Even when he hated her and cheated, when he knew the relationship was hauling them from the inside out and she had been cheating too. Everywhere I go, take a little piece of you. The wasp was there the first time he injected testosterone. He was so happy he cried when his voice sounded different. She was there the first time he looked in the mirror and saw flashes of himself instead of a stranger. The fly remembered sobbing once because he thought he would never survive long enough to become a man. The parasitoid wasp held him through it. The first person to call him by his chosen name, first person to call him a man, the first person to treat him like a man, the first person to see him. You're gonna get there, Bug, she whispered softly. That made everything worse, because she did help create him. The fly remembers the suicide attempts sometimes too, being so tired of living in the wrong body. How gentle she sounded afterward, how softly she touched him, how both of them cried. A fly loved a spider, and afterward he spent years letting other hungry things crawl inside him, hoping they would finally fill the emptiness instead of feeding on it. You know, alive because of you, he would think. Distance created longing. At 23, he realizes he has become part spider too, not because spiders infected him, because people shape each other. The fly was a product of everyone who ever touched him tenderly enough to leave damage behind. And they were products of the people who hurt them too. Hurt queer people creating more hurt queer people, trying desperately to love each other correctly while bleeding all over everything they touched. The wasp never taught him mutual respect. None of them did. None of them knew what that looked like themselves. How could they? They were all just abused, lonely trans people trying desperately to survive long enough to become real. How could they have? Survival. It makes us selfish and cruel. Sometimes survival turns love into consumption, feeling hollow, feeling starving, feeling 18 forever. The years spent trying desperately to earn love through usefulness, the cheating, the being cheated on, drinking, cigarettes, sex, drugs, drinking, cigarettes, drugs, then drinking again, throwing up in gas station bathrooms, the screaming, nights spent crying so hard the fly felt sick. All this made him believe he could become himself. The people who hurt him the most created him. Lonely, damaged people seeking a warm body to lay with that night from a lost 18-year-old. Now that he's their age, he sees how lost and hurt they were too. They didn't know what the fuck they were doing either. Afterwards, he spent years letting hungry things crawl inside him, hoping they would fill the emptiness inside instead of feeding on from the rot within. They never did. But still, in honor of the people who have ruined and remade him all at once, fuck you, and thank you for everything.